Well, Independence Day celebrates freedoms for most Americans, but how are black Americans thinking about marking the day at a time of nationwide protests for racial equality? Some prominent black American commentators have been taking to social media to promote the famous anti-slavery speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" by Frederick Douglass. Now, he was a former slave who escaped and later became a national leader of the abolitionist movement and confidant of President Abraham Lincoln. Well, a little earlier, we spoke to Dr. Rashawn Ray at the Brookings Institution. Much of his research focuses on race and social activism, and I began by asking him to share with us an important passage from the anti-slavery speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" by Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass gave this speech on July 5th, actually, 1852. And one of the statements that he made was, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July?" I answer, "A day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustices and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty, an unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciations of tyrants. Brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, and to him, mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour."
Thank you so much for reading that. You can feel the power as you read them there, and it's not surprising that so many people have been sharing that on social media today. What do those words mean to you?
I think what they mean is continue to have a dreams deferred, to actually give a shout out to Langston Hughes. And thinking about Frederick Douglass, him being a slave in Maryland on a very gruesome plantation where he was beaten regularly, where others were beaten. He actually taught himself how to read and write. He then freed himself by actually breaking away from his master, actually beating his master, and then heading north, going on to become one of America's and the world's greatest writers, greatest orators. He also helped President Lincoln to rethink slavery. And of course, he was part of the abolitionist movement and helped to found the North Star periodical.
And what do you make of the conversations that we're having right now, of course, but they've been having throughout the day today on the 4th of July? It feels a very different year this year than previous years. Really serious questions being asked about what it actually means. What do you make of it?
Well, I think what's happening right now is that July 4th has always been a holiday of contradictions. So, if we go back, people like myself, on up until about 60 years ago, actually couldn't vote, actually couldn't live in any neighborhood that they wanted to. Now, these sort of things are possible. However, what's happening right here at this moment with the global pandemic related to COVID-19, the fact that millions of Americans are still out of work, the fact that COVID-19 is hitting the United States worse than basically any other country in the world. And then, of course, this is coupled with a continuation of police brutality, a continuation of structural racism. So I think it's a lot of people, black, white, and otherwise, who are hurting in the United States, who don't necessarily see this July 4th of 2020 as something to celebrate, but instead as an opportunity to reflect, to rethink what we want to see in November and what we want to see in 2021 and moving forward.
And Rashawn, just want your thoughts on one final issue before we leave it. In the last hour, we were hearing from people re-upping Juneteenth again and the significance of that and calling that to be the real day that Americans mark. Your reaction to that?
Well, obviously, Juneteenth is the day when some of the last slaves in Galveston, Texas learned of their freedom. And as I've written about at the Brookings Institution, I think Juneteenth should not only be a national holiday, but it is also a rallying cry for reparations. What we're seeing is that college-educated blacks have 7 times less wealth than college-educated whites. What we're seeing is that black Americans are 3.5 times more likely than whites to be killed by the police when they're not attacking. What we're seeing is that black houses, not houses in predominantly black neighborhoods, are worth $50,000 less than those in predominantly white neighborhoods. And we put all these stats together. And again, we see dreams deferred and supposedly the land of the free, the home of the brave. We're not seeing that. And we need to advance policies. And I think Juneteenth can help with this. I think reparations can help with this. And I think more progressive policies can help us get to a point where racial equality and freedom is something that America really stands for.